And joining us live right now is Danny Dichio of TFC Academy, former TFC player, first goal in history. Danny, welcome to Red Card, my friend.
Good evening. How you doing, Anthony?
I'm very good, Danny. I understand you're just fresh off the field, so great of you to take time to join us. Danny, I wanted to pick your brain this evening about coaching and about some of the things you've learned and some of the things you want to relate to the young coaches out there in Ontario and in Canada. First and foremost, let's talk about it. You had a storied career. You played in Italy. You played in England. You played here in MLS. When you decided to hang up the boots, what persuaded you to get into the coaching industry?
Well, to be quite honest, Anthony, I was already thinking about coaching while still in my playing career. I was already doing my UEFA B when I was still in England, so I was attending that course. I was completing it up in Scotland, where Jose Mourinho was doing his one as well. And during that period of completing my UEFA B, I was starting to do my UEFA A, and in the process of doing that, and that's when I made my move over to North America to run one. Kind of put a halt to that, but I continued with my coaching badges, certificates, wherever you call them, over here in North America. I'd done my USSF B and A while in the off season, while I was playing still in the first couple of years. So it was something that always intrigued me, because I basically left school at 15, Anthony, when I was taken in by Queen's Park Rangers at a young age, and this is all I've known all my life, and I wanted to go into the coaching side of things, the tactical, the periodization of learning and teaching younger players about it as well.
So, Danny, let me ask you this. Where was the desire in your heart? Was it first to get in coaching young players, or was it to get right into semi-pro or pros? Where was the desire in your mind to start this new profession in your life?
I don't think it was so much what team or what age group I preferred to actually coach. It was just I was kind of hooked from even starting my UEFA B, because as younger players, when you're growing up, you don't take in a whole lot of tactical nous when you're being taught it, to be quite honest, Anthony. And it's now only since the days of Football Manager, certain computer games like FIFA or Pro Evolution, where our younger players within the club and the academy are talking about formations, are talking about players' strengths and different sequences of passes that they can break down a team. Now, I never knew any of that when I was a player. I just played the game because I loved it. I played out on the streets. It's something I'd done 24 hours a day if I could. And it was kind of after, or just after my UEFA B, when I was really intrigued about not only the tactical side of it, but also the nutrition side of it, how to look after yourself, the maturation of the certain player as they're going through certain age groups, and that was something that really intrigued me.
Danny, let's talk about the time you spent in England learning how to become a good coach, educating yourself. You spent time in France, if I'm not mistaken, a little bit of time in Italy. What have you taken from these countries? What have you digested? What have you put in your mind that you want to relay here to the young players of TFC Academy, and also to some of the young coaches that want to pick your brain? Give us some understanding that really is important for you still today, that you took away from those countries when you were learning.
Well, going back to England, Anthony, it was definitely at the early stages of the old school methodology in England, that it was a lot of rah instead of specific teaching. It was a lot more of encouraging if you've done well, but on the other side to that, the counter to that, was the harsh words and the hairdryer treatment that Sir Alex is most famous for, from certain coaches that kind of really kept you on your toes. But when I went to Italy at a young age, I really saw how the tactical side of training was really implemented under Carlos Menotti, even Sven-Göran Eriksson at Sampdoria for a little time before he left to Lazio. But the real kind of detail that went into each specific training session, and how you looked after your body on and off the field, we stayed for long periods at the training grounds. I was never ever used to that when I was a young player in England. It was basically you come in for training, you train, you have your lunch, and then you go. But in Italy, you stayed with the group. You stayed within the training facility for the whole day, double sessions. You learned about how to look after your body, whether it be in the gym, whether it be on a technical session. And it was just a whole different way of preparing yourself to play the game. And I took a lot of that into my coaching at a young age when I started getting into the game of my licenses. And even more recently, going on the French course, and we obviously have Laurent Gouillot, who's come over from the French Federation now. That totally opened my eyes up to a different way of teaching, a different methodology it's more of a guidance to the younger players. You're not giving them the answer. It's a guided discovery where you're manipulating certain situations, whether it be attacking situations, defensive situations, and you're asking them questions. You're guiding them through the session, and they're having to come up with the answer. And it's a real interesting way of coaching and teaching the younger players.
Danny, let's talk to the young coaches out there. Today, when you're preparing your sessions a day in advance, a week in advance, a month in advance, what is going through your mind to keep these young players motivated, energetic, passionate about training? Because let's be honest, Danny, a lot of times training sessions, whether it's in an academy or a youth club, they're not fun. They're boring. They're the same methodical things over and over again. And kids aren't stupid, Danny. They can see through this. And if you don't have a coach, I've seen it with my own two sons, and that coach doesn't come prepared with something new each and every time, they're going to turn you off, Danny.
Of course. And that's the real quality of the coach, to be quite honest, Anthony, is getting that feeling. And I go back to the French course again. They're saying, if you do not know how your player is feeling, not only about the session, but about how he's done at school that day, what's going on in his family life, you have no idea how he's going to approach that session. So the actual coach has to have a good understanding, get a good feeling of the environment that he's going into, whether he's wanting to work on a crossing and finishing session or a defending session that day. He has to try and get his point across and manipulate it in some way where he can still try and get his coaching points across, but still have a session where the players are enjoying it, they're on the move. There's nothing I hated more as a player, Anthony, than standing around listening to a coach harp on about stuff that we've heard before for long periods, because at the end of the day, you want to be moving, you want to be kicking the ball around, you want to be learning through different situations, the game. And that's how the game is the best teacher at the end of the day.
You know, Danny, I watched you through the Generation Adidas tourney, and I saw calmness. I saw a methodical thinking young coach on the sidelines talking to his players. But what stuck out to me was simply this, and I need you again to talk to the coaches out there. Whether it's a game situation, whether it's a training session, what I enjoyed what you did is you involved the top player all the way to the last player on the bench, talking about what was going out on the field there, explaining what you wanted to everyone. What I find today still with many coaches is they really cling on to that 11, 12, 13 favorite players, involve them in everything, and the 3 or 4 that he knows are just going to be used sporadically, he barely talks to those players. How dangerous, how poisonous is that?
That's very dangerous, because at the end of the day, Anthony, you never, ever know when you're going to be needing these players, and you never, the bigger question is, you never know when these players are going to be coming into a maturity where they're the top players of your group, and it's something that we're very lucky at Toronto to have a good nucleus of probably 15 to 20 players at each level. But now we're starting to mix our age groups. We don't have a specific age group in our teams anymore. We could have very, very good 2001s playing with very, very good 2099 players at this moment in time. And we feel that to give the players a chance, every player really matures at a different age, whether they're big, athletic at a certain age, whether they're small and weak. We need to speak to them on the same level, whether they're the star striker, whether they're the young up-and-coming right back, the understudy goalkeeper who's learning off the more experienced one, you have to involve them not only for their own maturity and confidence, but you have to make them feel part of the team as well. And that's a big part of my way of teaching.
Let's talk about the pressure aspect. Let's talk about the responsibility these young men have day in and day out when they come to your academy, when they go to other academies in Ontario, when they go to other high-level elite youth clubs. Let's talk about the pressure that mums and dads put on these youngsters. Let's talk about the pressure they feel themselves when they're entering a training session or getting ready for a game, that they have to make sure that they bring everything they got or the coach will not have confidence in them. Let's discuss this. Let's discuss how we really channel this energy in a positive way instead of, destroying that youngster's, confidence.
Well, I kind of take it back to when I was a young boy, Anthony, and I had an Italian father that was very strict with me, that stood on the sidelines for games and got involved with some scuffles, would I say, and I go back to feeling how embarrassed I was in those days, and I take it back to the kids of nowadays and the parents, and I try to say to them, you have to try and let the kid play to his ability. He's at this academy or he's with this team for a reason. We've seen a certain aspect of his game that we would like to see develop even more, and by you shouting on the sidelines, by you putting even more pressure on him, he's already in a pressure environment because he's putting himself under pressure to try and play with these higher standard players, whether it's at our academy, whether it's at A&B, Sigma, Vaughan, who have a very good bunch of young players as well. It's a very difficult environment for a lot of these players to go in, whether you're a younger player, whether you're a teenager, whether you're a U21 player. And I just feel sometimes we put added pressure on these younger players from outside forces when there's no need for it, Anthony. There's no need for it at all. And we've come up with a plan now for 2 or 3 years now where we do not let parents watch every training session here at TFC Academy, because we want the child, the younger players' full attention to the coach or to the game or to the actual session, what is going on, rather than looking over for a thumbs up from his parent or from a shout from his parent to say he's doing well or to get stuck in. And I go to watch my kids in certain games, Anthony, and I have to stand back. I really have to do, because some of the stuff that's coming from the sidelines is just not good at all.
Let's talk about that pressure again, and I need you to be brutally honest and upfront, because I know you will be, Danny, but this is a real hot issue for the last, I would say, 20 to 25 years in North America. It was in Europe, but I think it's gone away. Let's talk about the pressure that smaller player has to perform in a game, in training sessions, in a tryout, on and on, to compete with that player that is much taller, much more physical, but really might not have the same heart, the same desire, the same technique and the tactics that player that is taller than him. In your mind, how do we start, focusing in on and giving the same respect to that smaller player that we've been doing here in North America with the taller and more robust player, on and on? How do we do that?
It's very easy, to be quite honest, Anthony, and you have to have trust in your coaches, and you have to tell them as either a president or a director of the club or the team, to say that winning at all costs is not the be-all and end-all. It's about developing players, and we have probably one of the best examples in the world, or definitely in MLS at our club, for one of the smallest, tiniest, probably frail players that played in Serie A for a long time and has come over to MLS and tore the league apart. And with what Jovinko has done, not only for the American League, because it's also known as a physical athletic league, has shown that a player that thinks 2-3 steps ahead of every other player can be successful. And I'm a big believer in that as well, Anthony. I don't look at the size, I don't look at the athleticism of a player, I look how quickly he can think about the game, how quickly he can adapt to certain situations, because in the long run, if you're patient enough with the player and you develop him in the right way, the rewards are going to be just as big.
Let's talk about winning. You mentioned it. I wanted to talk to you a bit about that. I believe, in my own personal opinion, at the age of 14 on up, that's when we need to start cementing, ingraining in our young men here. Winning is important. Winning is key in many, many areas to gain success, whether personally or as a team. But before that, I got to tell you, Danny, I got a basement full of trophies, medals that my kids have won in tournaments, in house league competitions, rep competitions, you name it. And now they're all collecting dust. I'd rather have given all those away for one of my kids to get a full ride of a scholarship or a possibility at a pro contract. How important is it that we focus in on less trophies, less medals, less banquets, save some money, and put it into coaching development?
Again, I think it goes back to the coach, to the parents as well. And I've seen it numerous times, Anthony, where I've seen very, very good players jump from club to club just to be on a winning team. Now, they may have reduced their minutes, their playing minutes, by half the amount, but they're on a winning team. And for me, I would, looking at it as a parent myself or a coach, I would rather my son play in a team that he's playing every minute, he's developing as a player, he's winning as an individual rather winning as a team with trophies on the wall, badges of honor. Because at the end of the day, if he's playing 90 minutes, I go back to the old theory, I think it was in the Outliers book, where the 10,000 hour rule is there for everyone to succeed. I believe in that, but I believe it's even higher than that. And if you can play a certain amount of minutes at a competitive level, that's going to improve. If you can play in a competitive environment and train in a competitive environment rather than just coasting with a winning team that win 6 and 7-0 every week, you're going to get no learning or education out of that. You're not going to reach your full potential, in my opinion.
Danny, in a couple minutes, we just got a couple other points I want to touch upon, and then I'll let you go. We really appreciate your time. I want to talk about an identity, a style of play that I've yet to see with any youth club in Ontario, with any academy specifically that I've seen with my own eyes. I've seen it quite a bit with your League One team, with some of your young academy teams and your TFC2 team. It's possession, it's calmness, it's distributing the ball. I'm starting to see it with some of the youth clubs at certain age groups, but I'm not seeing that mandated from a youth club or on an academy starting from the young ages all the way up. When is this going to happen, do you believe, here in Canada? And how important is it that we start to implement an identity, a style, that if I go bring my son to this club, it's going to be a defensive-minded club to really ingrain that in them. Or I go to this club, it's an offensive, on and on. Your thoughts?
Well, I think it goes back to the mentality of does the coach, does the club want to win every game at all costs? And I've seen teams that are very direct, and they'll try and get the ball back to front as quickly as possible. And there's no argument with that to say that doesn't work for them, Anthony, but at the end of the day, if we're trying to produce players that can play under pressure, that can receive the ball in tight situations, that can have that calmness on the ball in tight areas, as you just spoke about, then we have to do that at a young age. And I've seen certain clubs, I've seen certain teams try and implement it. I've even gone out and watched the OPDL games this year where they've brought in the line, what's it called? The line of where you can start pressure. And it's worked to a certain degree, but it's also, I've seen coaches try and counter that by dropping up to a certain level against our younger teams and then being direct with them still. So it's in the works. I really do believe it's in the works, and I do believe that we have certain younger coaches here at a lot of the youth clubs that I go and watch that are trying to make their players play, and that's a lot of credit to the younger coaches out there, because from what I saw 4 or 5 years ago going out to watch games, it was this kick and rush football that is never going to get the player anywhere, is never going to get the players to reach a certain level, because when you put them in an environment where they have to play under pressure, they don't know how to do it. And we're still finding that with certain players we bring into the academy. We're trying to implement a possession-based methodology in progressing the ball out the back through our midfield and then breaking through the lines in the attack. And it's very hard for some young players to adapt to that. But It's just got to be a repetition, giving them the confidence that they can do it, and just practicing it in the game as well. And if it breaks down, they make a mistake, don't be harsh on them. Keep persevering with it.
Lastly, Danny, just before we let you go in a minute or less, let's talk about that most important word, communication in 2016. How important is it that young coach, that veteran coach, has an open door policy to talk to that young man and explain, these are the reasons why you're not playing. These are the reasons why I don't believe you're not doing what I'm expecting from you. That's why I'm not giving you this responsibility. How important is communication? Because as you said it, I know it. You don't know what's going through that young man's mind, whether it's during a game or at a training session. We don't know what's happened in the home life. We don't know what's happened at school. How important is it to talk and to communicate?
It's vital. 100%, Anthony, is vital that the coach understands that he cannot keep all 20 players of his squad happy. Whether you're in a professional environment, whether you're in a rep team, but you have to communicate with your players. You have to do that. And even so much with the parents every 6 weeks, just to explain what he's doing with the team, the coach, what he's trying to build, whether they're, as you explained, they're in a counter-attacking team, where he's trying to teach them a certain way of playing. But more importantly, the coach-player relationship is so vital for the player to have that confidence to make mistakes, but also to understand how he can rectify it, how he's improving, giving him certain targets to reach each month. I just feel without this, where I've played for coaches that are very stubborn, they'll say hello to you in the morning and rarely go into deep conversation, you get nothing back off the player. And I feel if you have that open relationship with the players and they know you're honest with them, you're going to get so much in return.
Danny, you're a class act. You're a gentleman, and many young men, I'm sure, are happy and glad that they're under your watch and helping and guiding them, hopefully, to a pro career, if not helping them to become young, productive men in society. So again, Danny, I want to thank you so much for making time out of your big, busy schedule. Good luck at the Generation Adidas tourney a little bit later on this year. And again, we really appreciate you making the time, my friend.
Thank you, Anthony. I appreciate you having me on anytime. Take care.
That is Danny Dichio of TFC Academy. What a class act. What a gentleman.